4 board members. We still don't have Marlon.
Well, has anybody heard anything from Marlon? Should we wait a minute or two, see if he wants to join?
We've heard nothing.
He hadn't sent an email or anything, I just checked, so.
Okay, well, it's 6:01. I guess we'll bring this meeting to order. If Marlon comes in, we'll continue on and go from there. So we'll bring the meeting of the April 28th meeting for the Glasgow Electric Plant Board to order, 6:02 p.m. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and any additions. But I believe before we get into that, I think we want to talk about maybe some, since this is kind of a strange time, we'll talk about maybe some etiquette we want to use while we're using Zoom. So Billy, if you want to go over this first little splash screen you've got here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just some things that I've noticed being on Zoom meetings that work better. First of all, I'm going to introduce everybody just because some people might be watching on a screen too small to recognize who is who. And then let's see now. So this is from the boardroom. This is me. I'm Billy Ray. This is Glenn Pritchard, board member. This is D.T. Froge, board member. This is Tag Taylor, board chairman. This represents Ronnie Hampton, who's only on audio. And this is Libby Short, board member, which is all the board except for Marlon Witcher.
Let me minimize
These things work a little better if when you all want to speak to something, you get Tag's attention somehow so that he can recognize you. The way Zoom works, only one person can be heard at a time. So if you would ask to be recognized so that we don't have 2 people talking at once, it's often helpful for you to mute your audio unless you're speaking in case a dog starts barking in the room or what have you. And then finally, when y'all get ready to vote on stuff or when the chairman calls the question, Amy's going to call out your names, do a roll call vote, because again, only one person can speak at once, so roll call is the most efficient way to make sure we know how everybody voted for the minutes. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we should be ready to move on.
Okay, so the one thing I found to be helpful, if you just hover your mouse over your screen, you can mute your volume, and then whenever you want to speak, you just push down on your space bar, and that allows you to speak, just for that period of time, and then it'll go ahead and mute again when you're finished. If you want to do that, that'd be great. That way it'll cut down on any we will hear keyboards clapping or phones ringing, and it will normally cut out the audio of the other people. So if you want to try that, I think it'll probably make the meeting go a little bit more smoothly. So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of agenda and any additions. Everybody has had a chance to look over the agenda. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to accept the agenda the way that it's presented today.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add an item to the agenda. This is DT.
Okay, go ahead, DT.
I'd like to add an item that in regard to the video conferencing, we have a facility set up at the board for people who can't connect.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you expand on that a little bit? You mean you're talking about bringing people into the meeting?
Event of video malfunction, which there seems to be, that if someone wants to participate, that they can come to the electric plant board and a facility set up there that they can participate. Some people are not as computer literate as others, and they will never get this thing working.
Well, I believe the only one that we've got outside of this meeting right now is Marlon, and I know that he's been using this technology because, due to the city council meeting we had just Monday night.
That may be true, but his internet may be dead. There's a lot of other reasons that you couldn't connect up. And it would take away your ability to participate if for some technical reason you couldn't have a way of being there. The electric plant board has got technicians, it's got facilities. Someone can sit down in front of a computer and participate.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I think we ought to have full participation, and we certainly want to make it as convenient as possible for all of our board members. However, my only issue is potential violation of any orders from the governor's office. Ronnie, I think maybe you might be able to speak to that. Do you have any insight into that?
Not really on what's going on right now. You know, they're loosening a little bit. Of course, hopefully, I was hoping the next meeting we would not even have to do the Zoom business, but, you know, I don't know where we're gonna be at when we get back to the, being allowed to have the meetings. I mean, right now, they don't want you to have those in person, you know, do it by the Zoom, which is what we're doing. I didn't really understand DT's comments, whether he was talking about having a space for the public to view it or whether it's just the members. I'm not sure.
I'm speaking with the board members. Surely we can provide a spot or two in that building where someone can sit down with a computer and participate.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about just a board member place, you probably could have a backup, I guess, area where a board member could come and be in the room by themselves and know that that camera is going to work and then participate. You know, I don't know that would be a violation. It just to have, I don't think, you know, you're going to have one or two more spots at most, just as a reserve, I guess. I don't know why Marlon's not participating tonight. It could be a problem with his camera and video.
Yeah, and Libby can barely participate. It's not a very good connection to be able to understand and make motions if you're not well connected.
And you're talking, DT, I think you're just talking about providing a desk and a computer so that we know it's going to work to join with the others by Zoom or whatever method we're doing. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I don't see why. I mean, you could set, you know, 6 places if you needed to in that building and not anybody close. It wouldn't be a meeting, it wouldn't be a physical meeting, but you've got the facilities. So I don't see that that's as a violation or a hindrance to any kind of social distancing rule, but it certainly needs to be fixed so that people don't get locked out because they don't know how to run a computer very well or their internet fails. We have the facilities to do that. There's no reason we can't.
Well, the only reason that I could see, and I agree with you, we have the facilities, the only reason I could see not to do it would be because of potential, you know, issues with, you know, cross-contamination, et cetera, and board.
They have to be in the same room. They have to, there's plenty of room when that building is not occupied that you can be there. There's 20 rooms. You sure you can't find a spot for each person that needs to? I mean, you're not talking probably more than a couple, but you need to be able to do it. Non-participation in the board that means these Zoom conferences aren't worth anything if everybody can't participate.
Yeah, you know, it's not that difficult. Click on a link and it works. You know, if you've got your internet working.
Some people are sophisticated. Some people have trouble. Sometimes
right. I don't necessarily know that we're having technology problems, and that's why Marlon's not here today. Everybody else seemed to be able to get on, but you know, something to think about.
It doesn't sound like Libby was able to get on. Are you on, Libby?
Libby, aren't you on?
Yes, I am. I'm having a hard time understanding some of it, but I'm getting 99%.
Okay.
That emphasizes my point. You can barely understand what's going on.
Right. Nothing's going to be perfect. I mean, we're all going to have to deal with a little bit of inconvenience. I understand that. Anything we can do to try to make it easier that still, I think, keeps us in compliance is what we want to do. That's the main objective here. Only reason we're doing this is because of compliance issues. So if we can do that and stay within compliance, so I mean, I'll have to defer a little bit to Billy on what he thinks. He knows more about the facilities than I do, what he thinks about that being a possibility.
Well, DT's right. We've got adequate space here it doesn't show. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I hear you.
DT's right. We've got plenty of space here to do that. And if, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me, although I don't have it on the agenda, I do have the last item on the meeting after the report for the board to decide what they want to do about meeting. Because right now, the way the board left it last month is that we were going to meet this way until further notice. So I put it at the end of the meeting for you all to decide what you're going to do next month. And I think it would be appropriate for DT's suggestion to be added to whatever you all decide to do at the end of the meeting, and we give Ronnie a chance to see if there's any conflict with the governor's orders. I'm like DT, I don't think there will be, but we'll have plenty of time for him to check it out.
Okay, great. So we got to cart before the horse a little bit here. So DT, do you want to withdraw your motion and then have us address that at the during the appropriate time with the current agenda?
That would be fine. This was an item for the agenda is what I was proposing. That was what I was going to propose, but as an item of the agenda, and we discuss this, and if it's on the agenda, I'm happy we'll wait till then.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so again, we've got a motion on the table for the approval of the current agenda and any additions. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We'll start with Glenn. Glenn, signify by saying aye or nay.
Aye.
DT? Libby?
Billy, can you repeat the motion for me?
The motion is to approve the agenda, Libby.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay, motion passes, so we've got our agenda set for the meeting. Moving on to number 2, consider minutes of the March 24th, 2020 meeting. If everybody's had a chance to review those, I'll entertain a motion to consider the minutes of the March 24th, 2020 meeting.
I'll do a motion.
Got a motion from Glenn. Do I have a second?
I'll second DT.
second.
DT second. Let's do a roll call vote again. Glenn, signify by saying aye or nay.
Aye.
DT? And Libby? Motion passes. Item number 3 on the agenda, discuss EPB COVID-19 response and results. Billy, you want to take over and give us a little idea of what we're talking about here?
I'll be glad to, Mr. Chairman. Going over the steps that we've already taken, of course, one of the things we're going to talk about a lot tonight was our decision to waive disconnects for non-payment. We're still in that status. We also decided to waive late payment fees. We're still in that status. We closed the lobby and we've curtailed our personnel visiting inside people's homes to work on technology issues. We've altered the schedules of the team to try to keep us apart, and we've pretty well developed a lot of new approaches to troubleshooting wiring inside of people's homes, and we've had this kind of an avalanche of people that wanted new outlets and new services. So we're meeting people at the door and trying to coach them. We're doing a lot of coaching on the phone. And occasionally we've had to stick a drop through the window and let them set a cable modem up or a set-top converter temporarily so that when this is over, we'll have to come back and straighten those up. But we've, using a lot of cleverness, they've made it work. Perhaps the most important thing, and this is just a little precursor to the discussion we've got for the rest of the meeting. At the last meeting, everyone should recall that we made projections. These blue lines were the normal status of the number of people that pay their bill prior to the due date. So the blues were all the normal expectations. The oranges were what we projected that we showed you last month. And the grays are actual experience now that we've got about 6 weeks of experience. And to our excitement, the number of people that are paying their bill like they used to is higher than we projected. It's normally 88%, it's like 86%. It's outstanding. The people that are paying during the grace period were actually greater than normal. So we can't give you any real-time information on who pays after disconnection because we're not disconnecting. But right now we're able to make pretty good projections on write-offs, and they're far lower than what we had expected. And I'm going to expound on that later on, but just for you to see a first blush of how things are going, they're going pretty well. The next agenda item is something for the board. It's an action item.
Billy, let me interrupt you real quick, if you don't mind. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think this is where number 3 is probably where we need to take DT's suggestion into account. Probably be the appropriate place, wouldn't you say?
I'm not following you, Chairman.
For making the arrangements within the EPB building for board members to participate in the meetings. I guess that's going to fall under number 3.
Okay, whatever you say.
So, DT, do you want to go ahead and give your motion again regarding the facilities to be available to board members during meetings?
All right. In regard to the video conferencing, I would like to make a motion that if there is anyone on the board that cannot electronically connect, that the boardroom or somewhere in the EPB building, the staff will provide a facility for them to join the meeting. That's what I would move.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I guess I'm confused on or he's wanting a second to see if that's okay with anybody else or another board member, or is that what he's asking?
That's a second for the motion to do that.
Yeah, it's a second. It's just a second for us to have discussion and subsequently a vote on providing a space available within the building of the EPB for board members to be able to participate in case they cannot participate through any other electronic means.
I mean, yeah, I would second that motion.
Okay, all right, so we've got a motion and a second. I'd like to have any discussion.
Repeat the motion, please.
The motion was to, for Libby, to enhance the future meetings that are conducted by Zoom with the availability of desks in the EPB for a board member to participate if they're having trouble connecting from home.
Okay.
So I guess the only point of discussion that I have is if make sure that we're legal with it. We're not in violation of anything. I don't think we would be, but I'd like Ronnie maybe to reach out to the AG's office, et cetera, to just make sure we're okay. And then I'm going to defer to Billy and his staff to ensure that we can have a space that's adequate to allow for proper social distancing, for that location.
Hey, Tag, my first impression is I don't think there would be any violation because that person's gonna be off in a room by themselves. I guess, you could also solve the problem with it wouldn't be as convenient for the board member to be sitting there, but, you could provide a tablet or something to the board member sitting out in their car if they needed to, if the facility was a problem, just so they would know they've got a good working tablet, that's gonna be hooked into the system. I think that's the ultimate purpose, it sounds like, of DT's motion, just to make sure everybody can participate.
Okay, so we'll rely on your advice on that one, Ronnie. If you feel like there's not going to be any type of violation, then we'll take the legal side out of it. Billy, from a just from a technical standpoint, any issues there?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that'll be a problem.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call for the question. We'll do a roll call vote. vote. All in favor of allowing adequate space for board members to participate in the meetings within the confines of the EPB in case they don't have the proper technology or there's a malfunction in technology, signify by saying aye. Glenn, we'll start with you first.
Aye.
DT
Aye.
and Libby.
Uh,
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to number 4, Billy.
Okay, the next item is a new offer from TVA, who has continued to try to find ways to help not so much the communities affected by this, but the end customers that are impacted by this crisis. And the newest matter that is up for your consideration is that they have offered a block of funds that is going to be made available to all the LPCs to, if they will match it, it's match, 1-for-1 match. If LPCs want to move money, both TVA's money and some of their own money, to nonprofits that are providing services that help blunt the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic on the community. The way they've done the math is that our portion would be $10,000. It's my understanding that about 130 of the 154 LPCs are at the $10,000 level, so that's the most common level. So, of course, we already are doing some work on providing funding to a nonprofit. What we're giving to right now is community relief, but that doesn't mean you have to continue with that.
Hey, Ronnie, could you mute yours real quick? I'm getting some rustling coming in from your side and it's making Billy's audio cut out. Do you care to mute your speaker or your microphone, please?
Yeah, I'll just sit still. How about that?
Okay.
Can you hit the Zoom? I can't get it. Okay, there we go. So, I've got, what you're seeing on the screen is a little report that I got done on the different nonprofits in Glasgow that we're familiar with that would qualify according to the TVA criteria on who would be, that they're providing the right kind of services and they're willing to provide the right IRS form to meet TVA's criteria. And so here they are. Children's Day Fund, there's some information there about what they do. Next Step, obviously community relief. I need the mouse. There we go. Community relief we're already given to Bridge Kentucky and Community Action of Southern Kentucky. So those agencies would qualify. Now, of course, we're already giving $4,500 a month to community relief. So we could just earmark $10,000 of the money we've already committed to them, and that, I believe, would attract TVA's additional $10,000. Community relief tells us, because we've talked to each one of these agencies, that if we gave them an additional $10,000, they'd like for you all to remove some of the limiting criteria that comes with the money right now. The money we're giving them now can only be used to pay EPB electric bills. And they say that now their biggest need is for additional funding to help people make rent payments. So if you all wanted to, you could stipulate that the $10,000 that will be coming as TVA's match could be used however community relief wanted to spend it. But, you know, you all could easily pick another one of these nonprofits and just leave the community relief funding as it is. It's completely at your discretion. But I need for you to decide who and how much so that I can complete an application that TVA has sitting on my desk for this to be implemented.
Anybody have any questions?
DT, my view is that we've just committed quite a bit of money to community relief and we don't really have an understanding of how much of that's going to be used or how much is being used. We haven't had an audit of it.
I've got a report.
I think committing more money to community relief at a time we don't even know what our income is going to be with the changes that are going on with the economy right now, that we just should sit tight and wait. I just don't see, we're not a charitable institution. If we have extra money, it's supposed to go back to the ratepayers. And committing it to something else that our ratepayers have no interest in is just, our own personal altruistic view of things. And I don't think that's the right thing to do.
So, Billy, from what I understand, what you've just said was that we could continue on with what we've already allocated to community relief, add this $10,000 to it. What we've already committed would be considered our match. We could still restrict what we've already committed in the $4,500 or so a month, but the $10,000 we could unrestrict and make that available for other uses. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. It would not require any new money from us other than what we've already committed. We could just capture 10,000 of what we've already committed, and that would attract a free 10,000 from TVA.
Okay, so basically it's, we're not going to be coming out of any money out of our own pocket, and I have a tendency to agree with DT that, these aren't times when we're looking at, and I think there's some slides that are going to be coming up later. They're going to show, what that potential cash flow impact is going to be, due to the loss of revenue and some other factors. But in this particular case, we could, it's no extra money out of our own pocket. We're just allocating along, or paying along and allocating those additional funds worth $10,000 from TVA, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Is this a fixed amount of money?
Yeah, the board has already committed $4,500 a month, DT, and TVA has offered this new matching money, but I've talked to them and they would be willing to count the money we've already committed, $10,000 of it, to match their $10,000, which would attract the $10,000 that they're willing to give us.
Is that $10,000 per year?
I think it's, as far as the TVA board is concerned, this is a one-shot deal. They committed $2 million to help right now, so there's no commitment other than just this one time.
Okay, so if we take the $4,500 for 2 months and say that's part of our relief, it satisfies the need.
That's what I'm told.
No problem. We're certainly going to put that much in this year or more.
Okay, so it seems like, if there's, let's go ahead and get a motion on the table. I'll entertain a motion. I believe right now that the best possible solution is to go ahead and allocate that money to a community relief fund. Already got the relationship, already have the funding criteria available. And that's really the best way for us to allocate these funds without any additional monies out of pocket other than what we're already giving to a charitable organization. So I'll entertain a motion, however you want to word it, but that's my recommendation.
Repeat what he just said, Billy.
Well, he's just calling for a motion. He's just opening the floor for a motion on allocating $10,000 of what we have already committed to community relief in order to attract an additional $10,000 from TVA.
Okay, well, I will certainly make that motion.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
DT second. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll start with you, Glenn, again. Vote yea or nay.
I think I understand this, but I'll vote aye on this one.
DT
I'll vote for it.
and Libby.
Aye.
Libby votes aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to number 5, unless you have anything else under number 4, Billy.
Well,
I would-
can I get a clarification on whoever made, I think it was DT that made the motion.
Libby made the motion.
Oh, Libby, did you make the motion? I want to
yeah.
clarify whether you are okay with community relief's request that this new $10,000 from TVA not be as restricted as the other money, so that they could use it for what their present, according to them, their present most essential need is to spend some of that money on rent assistance.
I didn't,
For the simple fact of, I mean, community relief has been phenomenal through this entire pandemic and the way that people's jobs have been affected. You know, out of the 185 rental units, I'm very fortunate to say that 183 have paid their rent for April. Now, there were several of those that did receive assistance from community relief, and I know those, they have been swamped over there, and they have knocked it completely out of the park. They've been awesome. So, yes, I'm good with leaving our monthly designation amount with the specifications that we had for it, and then the additional monies that would come, the extra $10,000. I'm completely fine with freeing that up to help people with rent, you know, and some other things. Because I mean, let's face it, we've got all kinds of kids at home, and people not working, and I mean, they, you know, they're having difficulty in a lot of areas.
I'm a little hesitant to let the money that we contribute to community relief be used for other things than electric power. So they can take the $10,000 that TVA commits to whatever institution or whatever procedure they want to, such as rent or whatever. But I'm still reluctant to let go of our commitment to our contribution to be for anything but electric power.
Yeah, I'm with you, DT, and I believe that is the motion that was on the table. But if Libby would like to amend her motion, we can vote again to ensure that the normal monthly contribution we make is still restricted, and then the extra $10,000 from TVA will be freed up for things like rent assistance, food assistance, etc.
I'm good with that.
Libby, would you like to amend your motion, and we'll vote again?
Are you hearing
Repeat
that?
what you said.
Say that again, Libby.
I said repeat what Tag said. Tag's
Well-
the one I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay,
What are you voting on?
He was just asking if you would agree to have your motion amended to maintain the restrictions on the EPB contribution that you all committed to in December, but free up the new money from TVA to be used at community relief's discretion.
Yes, I'm completely agreeable with that.
Okay. And DT, you were okay with seconding that?
I'm second that, yes.
Okay, let's vote again. Call for the question. Glenn, signify by saying aye or nay.
Aye.
DT
Aye.
and Libby.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Anything else on number 4 agenda item, Billy?
No.
Okay, moving on to number 5. Consider policy on EPB non-pay disconnect forbearance.
Okay, so this is pretty much the meat of the discussion for the evening. We're asking the question because the way you left it at the last meeting was let's continue forbearance until the April meeting. So we're kicking that around this month. I'm going to provide you, hopefully, with completely unbiased facts. I and the staff are not trying to suggest what you want to do with this, but I have a number of interesting facts that I think you would want to include in your consideration of this. So we're going to talk about who the customers are that are utilizing the forbearance, not names, but just more generic than that. We'll talk a little bit about the evolving economic conditions that we find ourselves in, or the whole community finds itself in. something about the enhanced COVID-19 relief benefits that have been made available, and then where the EPB is in helping with those benefits. So this gets into some of what we've already discussed. This is a graphic that is derived from community relief's data. Right here you can see these lower numbers at the bottom with the blue and the green. Those are the number of people that they have provided assistance to. And if you look at January and February, you see what common months are for what I assume to be common. Clearly, I don't have any experience with what community relief does, other than I'm in awe of it. The red bars are the amount of money, and the purple are also the amount for this year. So you can see what it looked like in the past. And in the purple, you can see January and February were pretty common. But March, you began to see, in fact, when we looked at these initially, we worried that the $4,500 we'd given them, they might not be able to find a way to spend it. But those fears have certainly been allayed as the COVID-19 issue began to hit in the middle of March. They went up to $3,000 worth of payments, and then in April, this is a projection for for what we know up until today, they're spending the whole $4,500, and I would have to assume that May will be even higher than that. So what you all did in December has been a godsend to this agency and to the people that they serve. You can see that in April, they're going to serve 43 families, where in February it was 11. At least the number of families that got electric bill assistance. Who are the people that are impacted? I think you all will want to consider that. And so one of the things you've got to consider is that mainly the people that are impacted by your forbearance are people that have lost their job during this crisis. And just to provide you some background, in February, Barron County's unemployment rate was 4.2%. At the end of March, it's right at 6%, 5.9%. We don't have April numbers yet, but I think we can infer that it will be even higher. So who are the people that are benefiting from forbearance? Well, one of the groups has got to be those that are newly unemployed from February. So 1.7% of the people that are interested in work are definitely impacted by the forbearance that we're granting. So how much, after 6 weeks of forbearance, where are we? How much do people owe? And really, it's kind of a strange thing. We are, in effect, providing loans to all these people, and they range from less than $50 to over $500. But as you can see, the median average is in the $200 range. These colors represent who they are, not names, but the blue are people that are on the residential fixed rate. The orange are the people that are on the variable rate, and there's twice as many people on the variable rate as are on the fixed, so it makes sense that it's bigger than the blue. And then the gray and the yellow are actually people, small commercial customers. They're in there as well. And then these up here are people on prepay. So as you can see, it's widely varied, but it's almost all, you don't see much green on here. Green represents people that owe a balance on their cable, and this dark blue is internet. And there's not a whole lot of that on there, and those numbers are relatively small. So how many of them are there? This graphic shows you that there are a little over 80 residential customers on fixed rates. that are behind, that are enjoying the forbearance. There's a little over 160, nearly 170 folks on the variable rate. There are a total of over 60 small commercial customers that are benefiting. This little blue sliver right here is we've got a couple of medium commercial customers, probably restaurants, that are behind, and so they're getting a benefit from the forbearance. There's less than 20 cable TV customers that are behind, and there's only about 15 internet customers that are behind. And these two over here are, again, residential customers on the prepay program. So all told, if you added all those bars together, it's about 400 customers. So way less than 1% of our customer base are behind on their bill because we're not disconnecting for non-payment. And again, this is just restating what you've already seen. The average amount that people are behind. And remember, this is a snapshot as of a couple of days ago. Every day these numbers increase because every day we pass by routes of groups of our customers that normally, if they had not paid, would have been disconnected for non-payment. So as of a few days ago, $200 is the most average number for people on the fixed and variable rates, about the same for small commercial. Cable, $100, internet, $60, and the iPay customers, a little less than 100. And that's an important thing for you to think about because those people, because of the iPay program and the way it works, we have no security against those. There's no deposits because the concept is they pay for it in advance. So when we decided to step in and not allow the system to terminate them because of this crisis, if those people walk, we're not going to collect anything. So that will turn, directly into write-offs. Now a little bit about the benefits. I think everybody on this board probably already knows this because of press coverage of it, but federal government stepped in and increased people's unemployment benefit by $600 a week in addition to whatever each state already provided. However, not many people are actually receiving it yet because of the website being overloaded and having trouble with applying for benefits. Of course, everybody that qualified has already gotten their $1,200 per adult stimulus payment deposited into their checking account, so that's another positive thing for those 400 accounts that are affected. And then for the small businesses that are impacted, this Paycheck Protection Program has already issued $349 billion in payments, or maybe they haven't issued the payments, but they've already accepted $349 billion worth of applications. And of course, I don't know, there's no way for me to know if any of that is going to find its way back to any of those GSA 1 customers that are, behind on their bill. It's just a matter for your consideration. So, what's actually going on with the products that we sell? Of course, our Primo product is electricity, and the yellow line on this graph represents average month-by-month consumption. And as you can see, averages, we often vary a little bit. In fact, in January, we had a pretty wide variation from our average sales driven by mainly mild weather. February, we had a pretty average month. Then March, as the COVID-19 impact began to hit, we had a pretty dramatic reduction in energy sales. April, we're going to have a shocking reduction. And if we look at these 6 weeks here, month and a half, it looks like about a 15% reduction in sales of energy Now, those are two shoulder months where it has been neither warm nor cold for most of the time. It's hard to say whether that 15% is going to be predictable across the hot months, but that's the only data we have. So that's the prediction that we're most likely to use. Now, here's an interesting thing. These are interesting. January and February were normal months as far as people asking to buy our LANs, our internet service, or our cable TV service. So you can see they're pretty similar, and they've been like that for years. 80 to 100 new internet customers, 30 or so cable customers. Well, in March, our number of new internet customers doubled to 159, and this graphic was produced a week or so ago. So halfway through April, we were already even higher than March. So what's happening is, even with forbearance and unemployment increases, there's been a lot more people buying internet service, and I think we attribute that to so many school kids winding up sequestered at their grandparents' house or something. And so those people have been wanting new services to satisfy the education needs and other social networking, whatever it is that for internet service. So that's been booming, even though we've been trying to figure out how to do that without sending people in the house. And we've made it work through a variety of different ways. In fact, there's the same kind of thing, not just new products, but additional outlets for cable modems and TV sets and what have you inside the houses. They have dramatically increased, even though we're not going in the house. So we're doing pretty well, handing people a modem or a set-top box out through our drive-through window, along with some coaching on how to install it themselves, and people have been accomplishing that. So how does that 15% reduction in sales break down? I don't think any of you all will be surprised to learn that residential sales are actually up because everybody's at home. So residential sales have increased over the last 6 weeks over a normal 6 weeks, similar 6-week period. So it's up 8%. Small commercial, though, is down 22%. Medium commercial down 24%, and the industry is down 15%. So all of those wrapped together wind up with that 15% number that I told you about, and those are the projections that we are basing these upcoming slides on, what our actual fiscal impact is. So here I'm going to show you not recommendations from the staff, but just a baseline number of projections, because I think you are owed our best projections on how fiscal 20 is going to wind up and what we think fiscal 21 is going to look like. To do that, we had to make some assumptions. So don't take any of these as me recommending that you do any of this. I'm just giving you the information on how we made our financial projections. So that starts off with the guess that you all would end forbearance on June the 1st. You may wait till August. That's completely up to you. But the projections, the fiscal projections are based on June 1. We think you're going to want us to give somewhere in the 4 to 6 month range for people to bring their account balance back to current. So we've built that into it. The kilowatt hour sales loss, we think will be 15% down through fiscal 2020. In fact, we think it won't return to normal until the middle of 2021, if then. Of course, you all should all remember that our sales have been decaying anyway, long before this pandemic came along. So we obviously think that will continue. LSC, of course, we already knew that they had announced they were closing, but they also threw us a curve on the 13th when they also filed Chapter 11. The corporation, not the local plant, but so we're losing them completely August the 1st, which will have an impact. And now they've filed Chapter 11, and our exposure, our unsecured exposure for them, even though we made them agree to let us bill them every 2 weeks, if we collect nothing from the bankruptcy court on the 70 grand they owe us for the 2 weeks that we have unsecured, would cost us $70,000. I'm assuming for these projections that you all will continue your normal pattern of allowing us to adjust cable TV rates to offset the increase in programming cost on July the 1st. If you're okay with that, that'll need to be on the May agenda, because if we're going to implement it July the 1st and give people 30 days notice, you need to act on it in May. And then we expect to continue our required annual review of our electric rates for adjustment on January 1, 2021 to reflect changes in fixed costs that are going to come about as a result of LSC being gone and whatever else happens through this pandemic. So with those assumptions, none of which are in concrete because the board has to decide what's concrete, but just for your information, we use those projections to produce these projections. So this is a cash flow impact projection, and don't let it scare you. It's not as complicated as it looks. Zero here is our present steady state of unrestricted cash. So everything you see above that line are things that would enhance our cash position. Everything below are things that would detract from our cash position, and they're color coded. The little orange dots are decrease in sales, which have a negative impact at least through January and probably on forever. The gray ones here in April and May is the cost of forbearance for not disconnecting people that don't pay their bill. That has a pretty significant impact. It starts coming back up here as positives when we assume people will start making payments on those loans, in effect, to bring us back to normal. And then this blue down here is the impact of LSC. If that bankruptcy costs us $70,000, that'll be realized quickly. And then after that, it'll continue to be, a problem until at least January, when we adjust the fixed charge collection to offset that loss. And then these blue dots up here are all reflective of the 3.1% credit from TVA on our power bill, of which we've only actually committed $4,500 a month to community relief. So those are all the impacts, and when you take those impacts and overlay it with this new blue line here that is our beginning unencumbered cash balance today, and after it goes through all of these changes that we're projecting, we go from, in a year, we go from $800,000 down to about $500,000. So the whole story of everything that we can see so far, with everything that we, with all the negatives that we have, both the reduction in sales, the forbearance, the loss of LSC, all of those things combined, actually we are prepared to handle that without having a giant change in our financial status. So we're glad to be in the position that we're in and have things work out. So that's all of the information that I had to give you. It's now time for your all's deliberation on whether you want to choose June the 1st or whether you just want to go another month and decide from there. I would like to add, I don't have a way to graphically present that, but the biggest voice in the Commonwealth of Kentucky on this matter of forbearance seems to be the Kentucky Public Service Commission. Even though we're not regulated by the Public Service Commission, it seems like you all should consider ending our forbearance somehow in line with the PSC so that Glasgow is not ending their forbearance sooner nor later than the mass of the utilities in the Commonwealth. Again, that's completely your decision, but I want you to know that that is something, you know, that we'll be measured by, is how we compare to the rest of the state. With that, that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, Billy, thank you very much. That's very helpful. You put it in terms I can understand, and so it looks like at the end of this fiscal year 2021, which will be June 30th, 2021, board's going to have to do a little bit of calculating to figure out how to absorb that potential $300,000 decrease in cash. I guess it would have to be considered a new rate structure, but until that point, it looks like we've got it under pretty good control as long as we follow along with the same projection that you've put in front of us today. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's nothing magic about the 800,000. It's not that that's just our reserve fund, and it's what Moody's always measures us by. They want that kind of money on hand. It enhances our bond rating when we borrow money. But there's no real detriment other than our how Moody's rates us to move from 800 to 500. And those are really conservative predictions. In fact, if you all didn't allocate a lot of that 3.1% credit from TVA into something else, if I had added, you'll notice that that savings is not populated up here on top. If it were, we'd be steady state. We'd pretty much wind up a year and a half from now still at $800,000.
Right, I may have missed the number. What is the total cost of the forbearance program so far?
Let's see, I thought I had that, but I think if you added up 400 bills at $200 average, you're going to get 80,000.
You said 80,000, right, Billy?
Right, 400 times 200, yeah.
So we're 2 months into it, or 1 month, is that
6 weeks.
month and a half, 80,000, so that's running 60,000 a month? Or
You could call it that, yeah. 55, yeah.
5250,
52,000
52.5.
a month, yeah. And we're committed already to what?
Well, you only committed to go until this board meeting and give us additional instructions from here. You know, I don't know what the Public Service Commission is thinking on this. I mean, there are some prognosticators in this business that think you ought to end it sooner because the benefits that people are getting from these different programs, if you wait longer and those benefits are distributed elsewhere, your bad debt on those is going to be higher. Now those are people that claim to have a crystal ball. I don't claim to have one.
Yeah, so it sounds like, really, we don't want to get out. I don't think we're going to get too far out in front of it. I think we really need to kind of stay with what's being accepted within the industry. So PSE, of course, is going to have a little bit better handle on what's going on with the rest of the non-public entities within the state. So I think that's pretty good guidance, if we use them for our guidance. Of course, right now, just, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff either, but, just from a layman's perspective, it seems to be this month may be a little bit premature to look at, starting to collect on those overdue payments, again. And looks like maybe the best course of action is to go ahead and extend this for another 30 days.
Do the people getting this realize that we are going to come back and collect this later?
Well, DT, we hope they do. I mean, we've used social media and a lot of our voices to remind them that this is not free electricity. It's not a gift, that they need to pay what they can when they can, so that these balances don't get out of hand. And frankly, when Melanie first delivered these numbers to me, I was surprised that the average was only $200. I thought it would be worse. Now, as the weather warms up and people use more energy, it seems logical to predict that it is going to get worse pretty quickly. But I can't say whether they know or not, but we think we have said it enough that people should know.
So I guess we need a motion on the table, or a motion to extend this another 30 days, look at it at the next board meeting, or however many days it is, but address this again at our next board meeting in May.
I give you a motion.
I got a motion from Glenn. Do I have a second?
Repeat that, Billy.
The motion was to continue forbearance until the May board meeting and reconsider it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Libby
I'll
seconds it,
make
Mr.
that
Chairman.
motion. Yes.
Okay, Libby, you'll make a second.
Do what?
Yes, Libby seconded it, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, so we got a motion by Glenn, second by Libby. Any further discussion? I will call for the question. We'll take a roll call. Glenn, we'll start with you. Aye or nay?
Aye.
DT
Uh,
and Libby. Okay, motion passes. We'll address this again at our May board meeting, and in the meantime, forbearance is still in effect until our May meeting. Moving on to number 6, Billy.
Okay, number 6 is a repeat of what I presented to you last month. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, or any of the board members, whether you want me to go through it bullet point by bullet point again or not. I'll do either way, whether you've seen it enough and you already know how you feel, or I can explain it.
DT, did you were you able to get the information regarding this potential pilot project at the last meeting?
yes, I listened to the last meeting.
Okay, great.
It came out. I wasn't on the phone, but I watched it. Yes.
Okay, all right, great. So I just want to make sure you didn't get left out on any of the particulars. So, I've really been thinking about this. We've got to weigh, the potential cost outlay and uncertain times with, really kind of moving towards what we all want, I believe, and that's to at least have some form of energy independence when it comes to our own citizenry and our local production and generation capabilities. So, of course, this is the first step in reaching that, at least a percentage of energy independence at that point. So, I think really where the conversation, in my opinion, needs to kind of revolve around, and that's going to be just doing kind of a cost benefit. Should we spend this money right now if it's available? And if not, do we need to look at this at a later point? I think everybody's on the same page. This is something we may, I think we all believe that we need to certainly look at. I think maybe the flavor we got from the last meeting was it really came down to a timing issue on cost. Knowing what we know now and kind of what these loss estimates are going to be and what our cash position is going to be, looking into that crystal ball, 6 to 18 months down the road, $13,000 adds to that. But if we look like we're going to still be in a pretty good cash position, it may be a time to go ahead and start this process, kind of get out ahead of it before we start negotiating some of this stuff with TVA. So, I'll entertain a motion. We'll try it again, see if anybody feels like it's something we need to go ahead and proceed with today. Libby, can you hear me?
Billy, you're just so unclear. Billy, what did you say?
He's just asking if anybody wants to make a motion on this project, the solar project, the solar pilot project that I explained last month.
Well, I guess thinking about last month's meeting, I guess we would need to go back in the minutes from the meeting that we designated the money, because am I correct in saying that we put aside $10,000 a month out of that rebate for a solar project exploration? Or?
It was not specifically for a solar project, it was for future projects, but yes, 10,000
Okay.
is allocated per month.
For future projects. Okay, so I guess my question would be, since we did that at that meeting, was that something that we even had to vote on that the last month or again? But I mean, y'all already know my thoughts on that project, because our whole objective with that is to get more insight and more knowledge on advancing that through the EPB, so that, hopefully we can be more self-sustaining in the future. So y'all already know my thoughts on that. I am fully on board for that. I know last month it was a 2-2 vote, and so I'm just curious as to whether that might be something, considering the financial impact of this pandemic, if that might not be something maybe we need to wait until we're done with the forbearance. Much as I'd like to say, Billy, go ahead, I'm just wondering if it might not be something that we need to wait until we end up and see what we're going to be financially. So like I said, the money's already there. I don't even know that we really had to vote on it last month, but, just to make everybody happy and to be, fiscally responsible during a time when we've got a lot of unknowns. Maybe we should wait till we at least end the forbearances on that.
Okay, so sounds like, Glenn, DT, does anybody want to make a motion on this? If not, it's probably going to die for lack of a motion.
No.
No.
Okay, so let's table this for a later date. Let's go ahead and place it on the agenda again. Let's make sure that we keep it in front of us so that we can make a decision whenever we feel like we're in less questionable times.
If I understood you all correctly, I won't put it on the agenda until after you all are ready to end forbearance then.
And Libby has a point. I think we may need to talk to Ronnie. We have already allocated money, to a potential project. Don't know if the pilot project's going to fall within the confines of what we've allocated the money towards. This could potentially be an item, Billy, that, you can use those funds we've already allocated, towards this without having the additional board approval. But let's make sure we get some legal counsel on that.
Well, I said this last month, that $13,000, it's well within my latitude to do it without asking, but I don't want to build a project right out here in front of the building that's going to attract a lot of attention without you guys being okay with it.
Ron, you want to say something?
Well, I just unmuted myself, but you'd have to define. I don't think anybody defined when you set aside that $10,000 for. I don't know exactly. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes exactly what it was set for projects. The only question you'd have is, this is a project that it's not something it's not an existing type thing you could utilize right now. So I think you'd have some questions about, do you have to vote on something that really is taking their plant board in a new direction as opposed to some sort of ongoing project or upgrading something you've already got in place.
Okay. Yeah, and I believe the spirit of the discussions we'd had previously, I think it was all wrapped around these potential renewable energy, projects. And, these things have to be done in phases. And this being a study of a potential, final project at a later date, I think would be really kind of considered a phase. But, this is just something I think I'd be more comfortable, getting the board approval on it also. So let's just hold off on this. Let's keep it on the agenda, and then we'll have a discussion with it later on when everybody feels a little more comfortable and we have a little bit more, certainty around economic conditions.
Understand? Okay, really all I have is just reports left. We'll do the March financial review. We'll talk about the May fuel cost adjustment, which continues to go down. We'll look at the CPD ledger that we look at every month. Talk a little bit about the performance of our broadband network and our electric network. In general, I don't think anybody would be surprised to hear that there's now more than a 60% increase in overall IP traffic on the broadband network. But still, the network is running comfortably at a little less than 70% of its capacity. We'll talk a little bit about the upgrades to the electric system. And here's where I had the future board meetings deal, but you have already dealt with that, so won't spend any more time on that. So this graphic is about nearly a decade worth of data for each month in the year on our load factor. Load factor is a measure of the ratio of energy sales to peak demand. And we want this number to be high. The higher this ratio, the less our net cost of wholesale energy from TVA is. And these last lines, January, February, March, and now April, represent really good performance. All of 2020, we've had near record load factors. We had one in March, and if April finishes the way it is today, it just has to last through Friday, we'll have the highest load factor we've ever had for an April. So that means we're getting our wholesale power at the lowest cost we've been getting it. So this is all very good performance metrics. The fuel cost adjustment in May that will be implemented May the 1st, 1.415 cents is another decrease. Obviously, TVA is selling less energy, so it's buying less fuel, and that means the fuel cost adjustment goes down. In March, we only used one predicted peak day, and we hit the right day, but we didn't get the right hour. We got surprised that the peak hour happened at 1 o'clock, and we had predicted it from 7 to 12. So we had a small miss there. It'll cost us about $4,000. And right now it looks like we'll only be calling one day in April. It's not because we're forbearing on calling those predicted peaks. We have up to 4 a month, not a year. It's baked into the rate. I know for a fact that when we predicted the one in April, we got a lot of complaints from people that we should forbear on that. Obviously, there's absolutely no way I can forbear on that. It's baked into our published rate. But Mother Nature has been pretty good about forbearance because so far, March we used one day, April we're probably just going to use one day, and we missed March only by 400 kW. We probably are going to miss April by about 800 kW, but those are relatively small amounts that allow the amount of collection from the coincident peak demand charge to be greater than our expense from TVA by enough that even if we miss, we're still going to probably break even. You'll recall last year we came out way behind, about $20,000 in the hole, but we're hoping for better in 2020, and so far we're $17,000 to the good. This is the breakdown on where people are on choosing the rates. On residential, we've got 1,848 on the fixed rate, still 3,847 on the variable. That has changed very little in the last couple of months. On small commercial, 337 on the fixed rate, 1,343 on the variable rate. Prepaid accounts, 952, and we've recovered about $135,000 of bad debt using the prepay system. Performance of the broadband network. No one would be surprised to hear that this dark blue line, which is representative of nearly a full day of data going through our broadband network, is hitting peaks that we've never seen before. All the Netflix movies and Amazon movies, whenever you're using the internet to watch movies, it's using a lot of data. Luckily, our total capacity is at 20 gigabits per second, and we've peaked at 13. So we're still about 65% of our total capacity. Even though on a few nodes, if you wind up with a lot of houses that have more of a Netflix appetite than others, we have had some times when we've gone over the capacity of that node, and when that happens, Josh and his team go out and buy new licenses for more spectrum on our network and cover that failure by moving the red line up some. So we're staying ahead of it, but normal nodes look more like this, where the capacity is far greater than what the demand is, even with everything that's going on. However, the way I was talking about how we're hooking up all those new customers without going in their homes, the way we do that is a lot more phone support. So you can see these are the number of internet and cable TV calls that came in February, which is normal month. They've doubled and tripled. This one right here is equal to all of March, and it only covers half of April. So the phones are just being hammered with people that were able to help solve technology issues, often just by talking them through the problem instead of rolling a truck over there. And then finally, the electric network is still being upgraded for reliability work. As all this is going on, we still have contractors in from Service Electric Company. They're doing a lot of these projects that are replacing structures that we deem to be inadequate at critical juncture points on our system. Here's some before and after pictures. Again, critical juncture point on our transmission grid and our distribution grid, where a major tap point, and these old poles had become untrustworthy, and we're replacing them with steel poles, and that work is ongoing. There's the downside to this is that it often results in a deal like this, where you replace this wood pole with a new one or a steel pole, and then we transfer all of our stuff and cut the pole off and leave it for the remaining tenants on that pole, normally Windstream, South Central, and now a new one, Kentucky Wired, on those poles. And we have no way to force them to move. I would like to say that South Central Rural Telephone is a really good corporate citizen, and normally they would work with us and move their stuff immediately. But often, if Windstream is above them, they can't move over until Windstream's out of the way. So we're going to wind up with a lot of this situation around Glasgow as we upgrade the grid. There's going to be a whole lot of these two-pole deals still out there, and I don't like it. They're not aesthetically pleasing at all. But we're kind of trapped until the other tenants decide they're as afraid of the structural status of that pole and decide to move over to the new pole. Then you wind up with this two-pole. And way too often in Glasgow, those things last for weeks, years, and I know some of them that have been there for a decade. So there's good and bad on that. We're getting a lot more resilient electric grid, but we're not improving the aesthetics at the same rate. And that is everything I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Billy. Appreciate it. Anybody have any other comments, questions before we adjourn? All right, I'll consider a motion for adjournment.
Motion we adjourn.
Got a motion. Do I have a second? I'll second it. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Billy.
Thank
Appreciate everybody, appreciate everybody's patience.